Welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Podcast on the Brink, your weekly dose of Indiana University basketball news and discussion. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. Podcast on the Brink is a joint production of the Assembly Call and Inside the Hall. For complete coverage of IU basketball, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com. On this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink, we are joined by Rob Phinisee, four-star point guard out of McCutcheon High School, who will be joining Indiana next season. His high school career recently ended at the hands of Zionsville, but we talk with Rob about his senior year, about his high school career as a whole, and about his trip to Seymour to watch the regionals last week, where he saw Romeo and Trayce Jackson-Davis play, and sat with his coach. And what did he and Archie talk about as they sat there watching that game? And then Alex Bozich hangs around, and he and I delve a little bit more into IU basketball recruiting, talking about, of course, Romeo, what it might mean, if anything, that he pushed his decision out to April, and then a little more on Trayce Jackson-Davis. That and more on this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink. Buying tickets can be complicated and confusing, but there is a better way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event, because whether you're searching for a last-minute deal, planning a night out with friends, or need to find the perfect gift, SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, and it's all fully guaranteed. There is nothing quite like being there in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone right now, and it is by far the easiest way that I have found to shop for tickets, because I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. And I'm planning on using the SeatGeek app here in just a few weeks. I was actually just texting with a fellow IU fan friend last night, and we're plotting going to see Yogi play for the Mavericks. It's a little hard for me to do that during the IU season, but once the season is over, I plan on getting out there at least once, hopefully a couple times, and I'm definitely going to use the SeatGeek app, because when I've done it in the past, that's how I've gotten my tickets, and it really is easy, really the best way to do it. And the reason for that is because SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever, because they save you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find you amazing deals. And one way to make that deal even more amazing is to use the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K, because when you do that, you get $20 off of your first SeatGeek purchase. So the instructions there are just download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K, and you will get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All right, and we are very pleased to be joined on this week's episode of Podcast on the Brink by Rob Phinisee, one of Indiana's incoming recruits for next season. Rob, thanks for joining us on Podcast on the Brink. Great to have you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, the NCAA tournament is coming up beginning this week. Are you do you follow the NCAA tournament pretty closely when it's on?
Yeah, I do. I've already filled out a packet, so
oh, did you?
To it.
What who'd you end up picking this year?
I had Virginia winning, but I just saw DeAndre Hunter broke his wrist, so I'm gonna have to go back and change things.
I saw the same thing, and they were my pick too. So maybe after this interview, we'll both have to go rework our brackets a little bit. So look, man. So speaking of tournaments, your guys' season obviously ended last week in a loss against Zionsville. You had a pretty good game, 33 of your team's 50 points in the loss. What does it feel like to have such a big game individually, but still walk away with your season and your high school career over?
It was pretty tough, but I mean, I feel like we played pretty hard and we progressed a lot throughout the season. So just in a progression from other guys and them just really playing their heart out. And I mean, we didn't really make that many shots that game like we usually do, so we can't really fault that. So everybody has good games and bad games. So I feel like I did pretty good that game, but I'm looking forward to the next level.
Yeah. The last time that you and I talked over on the Assembly Call, we discussed the transition that you were going through this season, being the senior leader of kind of a less experienced team, dealing with a new coach after Coach Peckinpah's retirement. As you look back now on your senior season, how do you think you handled the transition and the additional responsibilities that you had this year?
I feel like I handled it pretty well. I had a lot bigger responsibility of leading people. So we had 2 new guys come in, and I feel like they were pretty good additions, and just leading by example and just being a lot more vocal than I had to be up there. Good job at it.
Do you consider yourself more of a leadership by example type guy? Is the vocal leadership something that maybe you had to work on that wasn't quite as natural, or did that come pretty naturally to you?
I say leading by example is pretty natural, but I had to come out of my shell a little bit this year and be more vocal.
Yeah. So, you look at your numbers this season, 29 points, 6.8 boards, 5.9 assists, 3.8 steals. I mean, obviously great numbers. When you have such a big burden every night to produce for your team, does it ever get frustrating? Does it ever kind of get exhausting mentally or physically to have that kind of load every night?
Not really. I feel like I knew it was going to come this year, so I'll do whatever it takes to win. So it wasn't really a big problem for me.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, Alex, Bozich here. Want to go back a little bit. I think I told you the other day that I went to New Albany, so I can remember the first time I saw you play was actually in the state championship game, 2016. You guys obviously had a great run and played against New Albany in the championship game, came up short. But I'm curious, when did you as a player have a feeling that you could be a Big Ten level type of guy? I know you kind of got some scholarship offers right around that time, but when did you have the belief in yourself that you could play at the Big Ten level?
I say my going into my sophomore year, so my freshman summer. I don't know, I was playing against some guys who already had some Big Ten offers, and I felt like I stood my ground against them. So I say around that time I did.
And what was it like for you initially when your recruitment started to pick up? I mean, how did you handle the process, and was it, I know by the end you committed early, a little bit earlier than most guys, and some guys have it drag out a little bit longer, but what was the whole process like for you going through it, and how did you manage all the increased attention? Because I know it was probably a lot different for you, once you start getting offers from Big Ten schools and guys like myself are calling for interviews and coming to watch you play, and it just kind of changes things. So how did you enjoy the process, and also how did you handle all the attention?
I really liked it, just getting those calls from the coaches you always watch growing up. So, but I say my first offer that really boosted my confidence and made me into a better player. So after that, I stayed in the gym and got better each year progressively. But just handling all the different attention, I mean, really just let it come to me and just keep being yourself and doing what you're doing. Don't try to let that blow your head up or anything. So really, I think all the offers and all the different things from coaches really just made me a better player.
You mentioned kind of, not letting it get to your head, or not letting the attention get to you. Is that something that anyone, kind of gave you that advice, a parent, a friend, or anybody that kind of helped you through that? Or was that just something that kind of came naturally to you?
I say my mom, the way she raised me, you really just don't try to act like you're better than anybody, no matter the circumstance. So really, that's probably why.
And what, going back to that run in 2016 that you guys had, what do you remember most about that state tournament? Obviously, you would have liked to win the state championship, but I can remember going back watching that game. You played really well, had a really good game. But what do you remember most about that run and that team?
Really, probably the off-court stuff with my teammates. I mean, we really bonded a lot. Grew up with all those players, so we just advanced so far in the tournament and just really believing in each other, and really the relationship we have with each player we still stay in contact today. So I say the off-court stuff. We did a lot of things off the court to bond, really. So just those things, and I mean, playing a banger slide, that was huge. Once in a lifetime experience. So just running out on the court before the game, all those fans, it's crazy.
Rob, this past weekend, you were in Seymour checking out the regional games that involved a couple of IU targets, and Archie Miller, several other IU coaches were in attendance, along with many, many other people clad in cream and crimson. What was that atmosphere like at those games?
Oh, it was crazy. I don't think there's anything like it in the country. So just going there, experiencing that, and I know there were a lot of fans there that knew me, so it was crazy there. But just going there, experiencing that, and seeing the great players there was a really great experience.
I saw several pictures of you and Archie actually sitting next to each other. What were you guys talking about as you sat there watching the games?
Well, really just talking about the game. I mean, not too much about like different things at Indiana, but really just talking about the game and how good Trayce and Romeo really were.
Yeah. I know obviously your relationship with Archie, your respect for him as a coach, that was a big reason why you chose Indiana. In the time since you committed, as you've been able to build more of a relationship with him and kind of watched him go through a season where obviously the Indiana team this year was up and down, and you got to watch some of those games from close behind the bench. What have you learned about Archie over the last few months?
I think we're pretty similar. That we're pretty fiery on the court, but off the court, we're pretty laid back. Just like to hang out with friends and family and just enjoy ourselves. So I say just a fiery mentality on the court, and then off court things are pretty similar.
Yeah. And how about, as a guard, what are maybe some things that you've learned so far about being a guard for him and what he's going to expect of you, both as a freshman, right, when you come in, and in terms of your development long-term for the program?
The guards run their offense, and that was a big thing. Even before our committee, he came down and showed me different things he wanted to accomplish. So I know the guards, they attack a lot of ball screens, and really he looks for the guards to run the team. So that's what intrigued me about it. So
what's next for you, Rob? Obviously, you got the Indiana All-Stars, which, the team hasn't been announced, but I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that you're going to be on that team. What between now and when you go to Bloomington, which I assume will be sometime early summer, June timeframe, what do you want to accomplish? Like what's your schedule going to look like on a day-to-day basis? Because obviously your season's over, but basketball never stops. I mean, it's constant improvement. But kind of what do you envision these next couple of months looking like for you?
Really just staying in the gym. I took 1 week off last week after our season, and then I started back yesterday. So really just staying in the gym every day, staying in the weight room, keep getting stronger, and just staying in shape so I'm ready when I get there.
And I'll get this question a lot, and if I don't ask you this, people will want to know what you mean by staying in the gym. But in as much detail as you want to give, when you go work out now, are you in there with other guys that maybe play with you in high school? Is there somebody else you work out with? And what kind of things do you do on a day-to-day basis to maybe work on your game?
First, when I go there, I usually do 2 or 3 minutes of ball handling, and then different form shooting and different shooting things. But it's different. Sometimes, most of the time, I go with my little brother, and then I go with my assistant coach from high school. So it really matters who I go with and what I do there. So it's a different range of things I do.
Is there certain things that you have identified, or maybe the coaching staff or even your high school staff have kind of talked to you about and said, hey, this is something we think you need to get better at? I mean, I know as a player, you're always evolving and doing what you can to get better, but is there anything specifically that you're trying to work on, get better at before you kind of get to the next level?
No, I wouldn't say anything specifically, but really, I think I work on everything when I go to the gym. So just keep improving. And if I stay in the gym every day and work on everything, I'm going to do better at every aspect of the game. So just staying in the gym and keep getting stronger. I know that's one big thing that's huge from going from high school level to college level, is the strength and the speed of the game. So if I stay in the weight room and improve my flexibility and a lot of different things, I can translate to the next level.
Rob, in terms of the physical preparation that you were just talking about, How does that work now that your senior year is done? Are you kind of on your own to work out and get in proper condition? Are you able to have contact with Cliff Marshall at IU to kind of get a plan in place for what kind of workouts that you should be doing? How does that process work at this stage for you?
Yeah, I can get a plan, but I mean, I've talked to him a couple times when I was there, so I have a general idea of what they do there. So he told me he wants me at 175 when I get there, but I'm at 174, so I mean, it wouldn't hurt if I'm a little bit above that. But
so you're close.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, the other guys that are coming in with you, Jerome Hunter, Demezy Anderson, Jake Forrester, how familiar are you with the games of those guys? Have you had a chance to see, I mean, maybe Demezy more than the others, but have you had a chance to see those guys play?
Yeah, like you said, I've seen Demezy play a couple times, and then I saw Jerome. When we went to IU once for a football game, we had an open gym with the guys. I played with him once, but Jake, I haven't seen him play. I know he's a athletic guy. I've seen the highlights of him. So, and Jerome, I know he's a do-it-all forward. So I'm not really familiar with Jake and Jerome like I am Demezy.
Yeah. When will you then get to campus and actually, start being able to work out with the team and work out with the other guys? What does that timeline look for you now as you move forward?
I don't know the exact date, but I'm pretty sure it's the second week of June. I know it's sometime after the Indian All-Stars, so sometime in June.
So, obviously, as we mentioned off the top, you filled out a bracket. Obviously, there was a name that was conspicuously absent from that bracket for the second straight year, which is Indiana. What does how do you kind of approach now, heading into Indiana, as a freshman, the Hoosiers, coming off 2 straight seasons, not making the NCAA tournament, as you kind of look forward to what you want to accomplish both as a team and individually, for your freshman year, what are some of those goals that you have in mind?
Really just win every game we play in. I know, I was looking at their schedule. I know those IPSW and what was the other game? Just a couple other games that they could have won. I mean, that would give them a shot at the tournament. But just I know those small games are really important. Just try to win every game you play in, and don't look down on any opponent you play against.
Yeah. That's for sure. So, I asked a few people who listened to the show if they had any questions that they wanted me to ask. And one guy I thought had a pretty good question for you. And my first question is, where have you seen more games? At Assembly Hall, because you obviously saw a bunch this year, or Mackey Arena, which is obviously much closer to you since you go to McCutcheon up there in Lafayette. Where have you seen more games?
That's probably honestly Assembly Hall, to be honest. Just this year, I've been to probably 4 games this year, but yeah, I would say probably Assembly Hall.
So do you anticipate any extra attention from Purdue fans when Indiana plays up in West Lafayette, given that you kind of spurned the local school for their arch rival heading south to Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of love and a lot of hate, so we'll see what happens when it comes.
So last question for you, Rob, and we really appreciate your time, man. Obviously, most of the questions that we're going to ask you about basketball, and I'm sure most of the questions that you get are about basketball, but you're also about to embark on a really exciting journey just as a student at Indiana, which a lot of us did and really enjoyed our time in Bloomington. What are you most looking forward to about Bloomington outside of basketball?
Really just getting to meet new people. And so, I mean, every time I've been in Bloomington, everyone's been welcome. So really just exploring the campus, meet new people, and just finding different things about Bloomington and the city there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to find, that's for sure. And if you ever have any questions, you'll have plenty of people willing to give you advice. So, but thanks, man. Thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to watching you in the Cream and Crimson next year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
All right, well, stick around. We have plenty more podcasts on the Brink coming up as Alex Bozich joins me and we dive into some more IU basketball recruiting talk. But before we get to that, another reminder to go check out our friends at HoosierProud.com. Hopefully by now you have checked them out. We've been talking about them all season, but if you haven't, no worries. There is still plenty of time to go and see all of their new gear. One of the big things that they kind of did this year, one of the things that they were really excited about was getting officially licensed IU gear. And they actually put out a couple of really cool new T-shirts right before the Big Ten tournament. Unfortunately, Indiana stay in the Big Ten tournament wasn't very long, but those shirts are really cool. And those shirts, if you buy those, they'll stick around for when Indiana starts making deep runs in the NCAA tournament again, which we all hope and expect will happen at some point in the future, right? But go to HoosierProud.com, click on their Indiana page. You will see the really cool Indiana All the Way T-shirts, as well as all the other officially licensed IU gear that they have, in addition to the official Inside the Hall T-shirts that they have, in addition to all the really, really cool T-shirts with designs inspired by unique elements of the Hoosier State. HoosierProud.com really does have some interesting T-shirts. There is something for everybody on your list of folks to buy gifts for who may be from the Hoosier State or consider themselves proud Hoosiers. You will find something at HoosierProud.com. And here's the best thing. Well, the second best thing. The best thing is that you go to HoosierProud.com and you get awesome gear for yourself and for somebody else. But the next best thing is that you do it and you save money. Because when you use the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K, you will actually get 15% off of your entire order. And that's not just the Inside the Hall T-shirts. It's not just one shirt. It's every single thing that you put in your shopping cart. You will get 15% off of it from Hoosier Proud. So go to HoosierProud.com, find all the stuff that you like, put it in your shopping cart, and then use the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K, and get 15% off. All right, now here is the rest of my conversation with Alex Bozich talking about Romeo Langford, Trayce Jackson-Davis, and more. Here we go. All righty. Well, our thanks again to Rob Phinisee for joining us for that interview. It's always great talking to Rob, Alex, and I tell you, that's now the second time that I've had a chance to interview him, and I've come away impressed both times. And I think the thing that strikes me is from a mentality perspective. It just seems like, based on what we know of Archie so far and what we know of Rob so far, it really feels like those two guys are going to mesh well.
Yeah, I agree. He's just a no-nonsense type of kid, which Archie's a no-nonsense type of coach, and so you would think they would get along very well. And the fact that he's a point guard, Archie was a point guard, I think they can obviously have a strong relationship and do some special things together. And it was really cool to see Robert and Seymour. Just a lot of New Albany fans are actually coming up and taking pictures with them. A lot of little kids actually just getting photos with them and saying, hey, we remember that 2016 game and good luck next year at Indiana. And he liked the attention, obviously. He signed autographs, took pictures for everyone that I saw that came up to him. So just a really friendly, nice young man who I think is going to represent the Indiana program very well.
One more question about him. Everybody's excited about him coming in because he's a point guard for a program that has lacked one for 2 years in a row. But beyond that obvious kind of, macro thing that he'll fill in, that macro gap that he'll fill in of being a point guard for a program that needs one, what are some of the specific skills that he's going to be able to bring to the table? And, look, we don't know if he's going to hit the ground running as a starter and what kind of transition he's going to have next year, and everybody should be patient with him. But what are some of the specific skills he's going to bring that maybe have been lacking in this program for the last couple of years?
Well, the first thing I would say is his ability. He's not a overly explosive athlete, but he does a pretty good job of getting to the rim and finishing. I think that's something that was a little been lacking for Indiana from its guards the last couple of years. I mean, he's obviously going to have to get stronger. He mentioned what the weight they want him to come in at, and I think he's going to find once he gets in the strength and conditioning program that he's going to probably put on even more just from muscle this summer. But he does a pretty good job, I feel like, despite not being an elite athlete, of getting to the rim and finishing plays. He's an improving shooter. But the thing I think he will bring over the course of time is just a consistent presence. Indiana didn't necessarily have continuity in its program for a long time. Didn't have guys that by the time that they were upperclassmen you could rely on night in and night out. There was a lot of turnover, and I think he's going to be probably a 4-year player who, by the time he's a senior, maybe a junior as well, that you look at and you can rely on him night in and night out to be the same level of performer. We've talked a lot about different ways to build a program, and really, if you're not going to go the one and done route, and I don't think Indiana is going to be a consistent landing spot for one and dones every year. I think the best model is, the Virginia / Villanova type model where, you have guys in the program for 3 or 4 years, and then you just, you keep getting 2 or 3 new players every year that are really solid guys, and maybe you sprinkle in a 5-star talent here or there, but the younger guys kind of learn the ropes from the older guys, and once they're upperclassmen, they're ready to be leaders and lead their team deep in on tournament runs. And I think that's kind of what the Indiana fans have to hope this first recruiting class for Archie Miller is going to be the start of. They might take some lumps as younger guys, but I think Robert Phinisee is a guy who is going to be a consistent presence, and I think that's something that the program desperately needs.
So we talked about the games in Seymour that Robert was at, and Archie Miller was there, and I think all the assistant coaches ended up making their way at some point during the day this past weekend. You were there, and obviously you got to see Romeo and Trayce Jackson-Davis play games in the morning, and then they faced off against each other in the evening. Romeo and New Albany won that game, and so they move on to the semi-state. Let's start with Romeo. What were your impressions of him and his play, and just kind of what the atmosphere was like in terms of attention on him that day in Seymour?
Well, it was my first time seeing Romeo live in action. Wait, I'm not being truthful there. Just kidding.
How many times have you seen him play? Seriously, how many games? Like if you had to ballpark it, because you probably can't think of the exact number.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to add it up. This year, I've been to over half of New Albany's games, and they've played, I think, 25. So I've been to a lot this year, and then I've obviously been to some going back to his freshman year of high school. So I've seen him play over a long period of time. So nothing really surprises me that he does. I was a little more surprised at something that other teams did. More than I was what Romeo did on Saturday, in that Bloomington South and Center Grove both started out trying to guard him straight up, and that's just not a way to beat New Albany or slow Romeo down. I mean, he doesn't show any emotion on the floor. You can't ever really read him, but I can tell you when he's guarded one-on-one, his eyes are probably looking right at the basket, as in, I'm going to go right past this guy and shoot a layup. And that's what happened often in those games when they tried to guard him straight up. I thought really the week before, Floyd Central had a much better game plan devised to slow him down. It made it harder for him to do things, because really at this level, if you let him catch the ball and you don't make him give it back up, it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 2 guys on him. Really, he's going to find a way to either find an open teammate, or he's going to go by both of them and score. And so, the games went about as I expected. I mean, he's obviously there's other good players on New Albany, but they're just a better team than Bloomington South. They beat them in the regular season, and they won again comfortably on Saturday. And then Center Grove, Trayce Jackson-Davis is obviously an outstanding player, but their guard play is just really not good enough to beat a team like New Albany. So Romeo, I mean, it's just, you watch the highlights and you see little different little wrinkles in his game every time he plays, different moves he does to get himself space, because he's seen about everything in terms of defenses. And as I said, I didn't think it was the best strategy in terms of trying to slow him down, and especially against Center Grove. I mean, I think he got 39. You just can't let him get the ball whenever he wants and drive in and shoot layups. But I thought it was a great day for him. 2 really good games, and he capped it off Saturday night with another night of autographs and pictures, although it's in the state tournament not as organized as what it is during the regular season, and that everyone basically just comes on the floor and there's a large crowd of people around him, and he's like picking up little kids and taking pictures with them and signing autographs. So it's pretty cool to see. But he was out there for quite a long time and seemed to be enjoying it. And but you also get the sense just from talking to him that he's not satisfied just getting to this step. Like he really wants to win state and go out on top, and it'll be interesting to see if they can pull that off.
One more question about New Albany, because I had a lot of people ask me this, and I don't really have any insight to give, but Sean East is a teammate of Romeo's and has put up some good numbers and has had some big games. And look, he has to have benefited from all the attention that Romeo gets. I'm sure that, helps contribute to some of the good numbers. But what kind of player is he? Because, I've had people ask me, why aren't we offering a scholarship to Sean East? And, my thinking there is if there was any way that he was a, division, Big Ten level recruit, I'm sure Archie and the staff and other teams would be, because certainly teams that,
right.
Coaches have seen him play enough. So what kind of player is he? Where do you think he ends up playing his college basketball?
I don't know where he'll end up. I think he's. I don't think he's a Big Ten level player. First off, that's not a knock on Sean East. I think he's a terrific high school player. I don't see him as a scholarship player at the Big Ten level. Now, if he were someone that wanted to walk on somewhere, he's obviously someone you would take. But I would not offer him a scholarship. What in terms of the type of player he is, he's a really good shooter. He's undersized, obviously, for the position that he plays. I think he's 5'9" or 5'10". He's a decent athlete, not great, but he does a pretty good job of getting by guys into the rim. The thing I wonder with him is how much of this is playing with another really good player, and how much is it his ability. I know he's talented. I know he's a good player. I think he's probably going to be an Indiana All-Star. I think he'll get a scholarship somewhere. But playing with Romeo Langford is a once in a lifetime thing that no one else really has ever had the benefit of, suiting up next to a player of that talent level for 4 years. And Sean East, surpassed 1,000 career points at New Albany, a great individual accomplishment for him. But to answer people's question, no, I would not offer him a scholarship. No, I don't think he's a Big Ten level recruit. Do I think he could play at a smaller D1 school? Yes, if it's the right fit. But maybe he ends up going the D2 route or a smaller school, and I think he'll make a really fine player at that level. But I am not sold on him as being a Big Ten level player.
My last topic for you here, a guy for whom there is no debate about whether he is a Big Ten level player, that is Trayce Jackson-Davis, and you saw him play a couple times. Have you seen him play live before this past weekend?
Yeah, but it was kind of in passing in an AAU type of deal, so it wasn't like I got like a great look. Obviously watched a lot of him on film from this season because Josh has been to several of his games, and I've edited some video. Seen a couple of full games, but he's, to me, just really starting to scratch the surface of what he can be in terms of a player. A lot of people forget, he had mono earlier this season, so he's still kind of coming back a little bit from that, and he still went out against New Albany and played really well, had a bunch of dunks. I mean, he dominated the morning game against Evansville North, which Evansville North's not a really good team at all. I mean, New Albany, I think, beat them by 69 points in the regular season. It was kind of an upset that they were even into the regional. But he really just destroyed them around the basket. Really most of the damage that he did in the games that I saw was from about 7 to 8 feet in. I haven't seen much of an outside mid-range game from him, which I'm sure something that he's working on, trying to get better. But he's a presence around the rim. He can block shots. His length is outstanding. To me, looks like he's going to continue to grow. And obviously he's got NBA bloodlines and has worked really hard to improve, because I remember last summer watching some of his AAU film and thinking, this guy is good, but has a long way to go. And now watching him, just the way he's finishing at the rim and the athleticism that he kind of shows in the paint and around the basket is on a different level from even what we saw over the summer. So I'd say he's rapidly improving, and the upside is tremendous. Will not be shocked at all. I think one of the services right now has him as a 5-star. I would not be surprised at all if he's a consensus 5-star type of guy when it's all said and done. And also, kind of a side note, after the game, after they lost to New Albany, he kind of walked from his locker room, which was on the other side of the court, to the other corner where they were going to get on the bus, and he got stopped by a lot of fans, and was just an incredibly gracious and friendly kid, stopping, after a tough loss, for him to stop and say hi to people and just have the attitude that he did. I thought that was impressive as well.
And it seems like Indiana's in a good position with him. I mean, obviously it's early. He's, I don't think, going to be committing anytime soon. And you hear names like, I think, Ohio State, Michigan State involved with him. I mean, pretty much, I'm sure all the big schools around here have certainly looked. But it seems like Indiana's in as good a position as you could be at this early stage in his recruitment. Is that
absolutely
fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they've done everything they can do to show him that he's a priority. They were obviously there. Archie Miller and Tom Ostrom were there for both games on Saturday, and then Bruiser Flint joined for the night session. Obviously, they're there to see Romeo too, but they wanted to make sure that Trayce knows that they're there to see him as well. And he visited several times. I think Indiana's in great shape, as good of a position as they can be in at this point. It'll be interesting to see how his timeline shifts, if at all, in terms of a decision. But I would say right now Indiana's in a great position, and he'd be a great get for them in 2019, because they obviously need as much front court help as they can get. They've got a pretty solid stable of guys that they'll have on next year's roster, but I think from a talent perspective, he'd be just another an upgrade, a guy who's a potential NBA player down the line.
Hey, one thing I forgot to mention and ask you about in regards to Romeo, I believe I read that they pushed the timetable out into mid-April in terms of making the decision, and it sounds like part of that was because obviously they're making a deep run in the state tournament. Then you've got the McDonald's game, and then the Jordan Brand game, and these other all-star games that he's playing in. Do you read anything into that? Moving the timetable in terms of whether it's a positive or a negative for Indiana, or is that just kind of almost like a procedural thing that they had to do just because of how many events are stacking up for Romeo over the next month?
Yeah, I mean, they want time as a family, I think, to actually sit down and think about recruiting and make the decision. And what people forget, when you're locked in on a season, and that's what New Albany is right now. I mean, this is, people don't, maybe everyone doesn't understand how big of a deal this is for the community, for the team, for the players. I mean, they really want to win a state championship, and if things go as they hope they will, they'll be in the state championship game on March 24th, and the plan is to go the next day down to McDonald's for the McDonald's All-American game, which would be on a Wednesday, but you have to report a couple days early, and there's a lot of things that go along with that. And then they've talked that they want to take another visit to Indiana before making a decision. It just wasn't going to work out from a time perspective for that to happen. And then you throw in the fact that he's also playing in the Jordan Brand game, which is in I think April 8th, which is a Sunday, and then the following weekend he's going to be in Portland, Oregon, playing in the Nike Hoop Summit, which is really a USA basketball event, pitting a USA team against the world. Noah Vonleh played in that previously, James Blackman Jr. Not sure if any other IU signees have played in it, but it's an annual event out in Portland, Oregon. So he's going to play in a span of a couple weeks, potentially a state championship game, McDonald's All-American game, Jordan Brand Classic, and Portland for the Nike Hoop Summit. So that's a lot of travel, and that's not really conducive for sitting down and, making a decision. So I think they just want, time to not feel like they're just, and people, there's a lot of people saying, well, why is this dragging out so long? I mean, the kid's earned the right to make the decision whenever he wants. If he wants to show up on campus in June without signing a letter of intent, he can do that. And so I would urge everyone to just be patient.
But what about our timetable, Alex?
Exactly.
What about us?
Exactly. I mean, that's just it's some of the stuff on Twitter. The questions I get asked, like, what does this mean? And it's I don't read into anything, and I also don't. And even if he doesn't go to Indiana, I will never buy into those who have tried to push this narrative, whether it be in the comment sections or on social media, that he didn't want to make his decision before the season because he was afraid of getting booed. I mean, think of all the other players from the state of Indiana who have committed to other schools and have played out their high school seasons, and nothing, they're not booed, they're not treated, unfairly. I mean, Gary Harris went to Michigan State. Was he booed his whole senior season at Hamilton Southeastern? No. I mean, people forget about these things and they move on. And so I just think some of the, obviously people want to know what he's going to do. And so it's kind of drives some of this mania, what does this mean? Or, what should we read into this? Oh, he's going to be going to 3 events and Darius Garland's going to be there. Is that a factor? From the time that I've started covering this recruitment, Mr. Langford has been pretty adamant that this is not a package deal. This is a family decision. And so if they choose to go to Indiana, it's because they wanted to go to Indiana. If they choose it's Vanderbilt or Kansas, it's because they thought that was the best place for them. I'll say that they've handled the process about as well as you can given the circumstances. They don't do things to seek out attention in terms of coverage of visits and things like that. I mean, they've done a great job of handling the process. So everyone just needs to take a deep breath, relax. When he's ready to decide, he'll make his decision. And, regardless of what the decision is, I think everyone should just respect it. And, from our selfish perspective, would it be fun to cover Indiana with Romeo Langford? Absolutely. But we'll see how it all shakes out. But don't buy into all the rumors and so saying this. I think Indiana's done a great job. If he wasn't, if here's the other thing you got to think about. If it was for sure that he wasn't going to Indiana, do you really think that Archie Miller, who gets paid $3 or $4 million to run, the marquee college basketball program in the state of Indiana, would be going to 2 of his regional games, watching him play in March if he knew for sure that Romeo Langford wasn't coming to Indiana? I mean, that's just ridiculous. People are obviously very interested in the decision and want to know where he's going, but just let it play out, and what happens. And that's the end of my rant. But I don't read into anything, any adjustments to the timetable or what certain things mean. I take what they say at face value, because to this point, to my knowledge, they've done everything that they said they were going to do. And that's, I think that's kind of the right that they've earned. They can do things as they wish as a family. That's their right. And I think people need to respect that.
That was a great rant.
I mean, what do you think on this, Jerod? I mean, do you disagree with anything I said?
No. Oh no, I agree. And I've seen those same rumors and kind of entertain them myself. The thought of, because everybody's, look, in the absence of actual information, people's imaginations are going to run wild. So, you're talking about, why is Archie still going to the games? And, I'm just imagining someone thinking, well, Alex, clearly they made Romeo and Archie talked at the beginning of the season and made a mutual decision. Romeo's not going to come to Indiana, but he'll keep it going so he gets all of the attention. Archie's going to keep coming to the games, so no one can blame him for not going after Romeo. And it's all just a big charade. I mean, obviously
right.
That's what's happening. So
absolutely. Wow. I mean, and I get it. But you're right. When in the absence of information, it becomes, the game of telephone of, I heard from this person who talked to this person who talked to this person. And I mean, I'm just saying there's no, this is a tightly, information, I would say, in this recruitment. There's not a lot of leaks. And so, maybe you talk to your brother's uncle's friend's brother that knows something, but I would double check your sources if you think you have anything for sure on this one, because I don't really think there's anything has been decided at this point, and I think it's very much still up in the air as to what's going to happen.
Well, my podcast co-host told me to just relax and wait for the decision and not buy into any of the rumors. So that's what I'm going to do.
Good advice. Good advice.
It's almost like Romeo is the least obsessed person about his own recruitment in the state of Indiana. Which good for him. Good for him.
The other thing is, like, when you ask him about each school, it's like it's not like he lights up or says anything differently in terms of his tone or his response on either school, on any of the schools. I mean, that's just his personality, his demeanor. It's almost like how he is on the court. I mean, he doesn't. It's not like there's an up or down for him. He just, everything is the same, and it is what it is. I think it'll make it's one thing I think is going to make him great one day in the NBA is that there's 82 games, and he's going to be able, if they lose a game, he's going to be able to pretty quickly move on to the next one and be ready to go for the next game, because he doesn't seem like, if he makes a turnover, if there's a foul called, he gets right back in there and on to the next play. So I think that's a pretty strong attribute for a basketball player to have.
No doubt about it. Well, hopefully they win. So they're playing Warren Central, and then if South Bend Riley wins, or will South Bend Riley play New Albany in the state title game?
They will in Class 4A, and South Bend Riley has a really interesting matchup with Carmel, who has lost, I think, 7 games, and South Bend Riley is unbeaten. But Carmel, I think, had a guy out to injury, if I'm not mistaken, and they are very well coached. It's almost like an opposite style play from Riley, who's very athletic and likes to get up and down. Carmel likes to control pace, play a half-court game, very deliberate. If they get a lead, they're hard to play against, because it's I guess maybe compared a little bit to Wisconsin.
I was just going to say, it sounds like an IU Wisconsin game from the past few years, which is not good for Riley.
It'll be an interesting contrast in styles. I'm a little actually bummed that I can't see both games. I think they're going on at the same time, and I'll be watching, obviously, New Albany and Warren Central, which Warren Central is unbeaten too. I mean, I think these are 2 fabulous semi-state games, and for me, this has been like, if I can't cover an NCAA tournament, I'd much rather be covering a really good Indiana high school state tournament than NIT or anything else. So, the coverage it's been fun to go to these games and just take in the atmospheres, and it's cool just to see how many people still care about high school basketball in Indiana. I think there was a time where people thought, was class basketball going to kill the high school game in Indiana, and I think this state tournament's been a pretty good indicator that things are alive and well and as good as ever.
Yep. Well, hey, it's like you and I said, I think last week, if there was ever a season for Indiana's year to end on March 1st, if it had to happen, might as well be this year, because there's an awesome state tournament to follow in the meantime. So,
absolutely.
All right, Alex. Well, thank you for your time. And once again, thanks to Rob Phinisee for joining us. And thank you for listening. And hey, just a quick reminder, we haven't said this in a while. I mean, I know we have the little thing that plays at the end, but we haven't kind of made a personal appeal. But if you have been listening to the show and you like the show, obviously we hope that you'll subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And then if you have, a few extra seconds and you'd be willing to give us a rating and especially a review, we really appreciate those. And the great thing about the review is, if you can tell us the specific things that you like about the show, it helps us to make sure that we kind of double down on those and keep doing them. And I always, I kind of periodically go through those reviews, and I always really, really enjoy the feedback that we get from those. So if you do have any extra time and you want to give that rating or review, it just helps people who are curious about the show kind of understand what they're going to get. And it also helps more people find the show, because the more people who subscribe and the more people who rate and review the show, the higher it pops up in the rankings and all that stuff, and the easier it is for people to find. So if you have some time this off season and would be willing to do that, we would greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And with that said, we will be back next week to talk more IU basketball. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Podcast on the Brink. We always appreciate you being here. To get more from me and from Alex, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com for complete coverage of Indiana University basketball. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or family member who loves IU basketball as much as you do. You can also support the show by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, which helps us get the word out to more IU fans like yourself. We will be back next week with a new episode. Until then, as always, go Hoosiers.